Welcome, everyone. I am so grateful that you hit play to spend time with me and my guest, Mackenzie Lee, today. We're talking about the office of the CEO and what that looks like inside an organization. And my guest, Mackenzie, is the library of knowledge on this topic. And I'm so excited. I reached out to him on LinkedIn. He was open to connecting with me, and we were able to put ourselves in a position of scheduling this time together. So I am super pumped to have him on the show. Mackenzie, you're coming in from New York. I'm here at my home office in Denver. Thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to dive into all of your wealth of knowledge.
Thanks for having me, Kalani.
So let's just start with, were you always in the office of the CEO? Maybe the title was chief of staff. Give us that backstory that helped you land where you're at today serving the community.
That's a great question. I stumbled on executive operations by accident.
Mm,
And, my career history, I've been a management consultant, a startup founder, and then I was asked to take things on for my CEO as a de facto chief of staff. And I really didn't know what I was doing
mm,
that it had a name,
mm-hmm.
executive operations. And CEO was just asking me, hey, can you put together a strategy deck for the firm? Or can you help us run the fundraising project for, the firm?
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't have a name for the type of activities I was doing. I think there's thousands of de facto chiefs of staff or
Right.
thousands of exec ops folks that are out there that don't actually get the praise or get the sponsorship. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a real vital need that leadership has and continues to have. And it's only getting harder to be a C-suite executive. And so that was how I got my start, which is being asked to do things on a piecemeal basis, but then realizing a little bit later that it had a name, which was executive operations or chief of staff. And so when I left that job, I decided to do a little exploration of my own. I had an opportunity to apply for more chief of staff jobs to finally get that formal title or to think
Mm.
about maybe creating something for myself.
Ooh,
And so, I took the summer off, went to Italy, went to London,
that
had
sounds
a really great
amazing.
summer
Yeah.
of exploration. And what I said, hey, maybe let's explore this chief of staff realm. Let me start writing on LinkedIn after never writing on LinkedIn before. Let me dust off my writing and philosophy skills, which I, really doubled down in college, but hadn't really exercised since then.
Mm-hmm.
And started to have folks in my network who were founders, CEOs, former chiefs, former Stanford alumni. It's my alma mater.
Okay.
Really
Yep.
talking to them and saying, hey, what's this chief of staff thing? How do you use it? What's the benefit? What sort of trends do you see? Why do you think it's interesting or not?
Mm-hmm.
Let's have a chat about that, and then we write about it on LinkedIn. And so, started my career with this. Started my firm with this idea of being a thought leader, content creator first, and just exploring what's the realm of possibility within executive operations. And the more that I wrote, the more that I generated interest online. And I
Mm-hmm.
connect with folks all over the world, folks like Alani, of course. And that was really exciting. So built my firm off of this audience and readership and thought leadership around the chief of staff executive operations function.
Mm.
What I've seen now is a move towards that executive operations term and also using the office of the CEO or the founder's office as new concepts in ways of thinking about how to unlock more value, both for the leaders, but also for the team, the support team. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that's really where I am today, where I'm publishing the second edition of my Chief of Staff playbook, which I announced the launch yesterday, and I got 500 people already
Ooh.
commenting on my post, which
Wow,
is
that's
nuts.
amazing. Yeah.
And then, forthcoming, webinars on the playbook itself, sharing those insights that I've gleaned working with my clients doing this executive operations work, but also just talking with chiefs of staff all over the world, executive assistants all over the world, from nonprofits, corporates, top
Mm-hmm.
government agencies, scale ups, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit of my journey.
I love
Um,
it.
and yeah, it's just fun to be a content creator. It's fun to connect with other people, to see how they're doing it, right? And then
Right.
bring the insights to the masses, to the community who's hungry for more.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when I hear content creator, I'm thinking, and we kind of talked about this in the unrecorded portion before we started letting people in. We've got an audience today, by the way. And like knowledge creator or knowledge, I don't want to say advocate. I'm going to have to think about it, but something we're really big here, which I was telling you about new vocabulary that really
Mhm.
ignites the imagination to kind of get out of common terms that they're using, which is why for you, I love the office of the CEO. That can encompass different players to achieve those goals. And as you said, which I love this term, unlock that value. And
Mhm.
when I'm working with candidates, helping them prepare or just having that initial screen, I'm like, what makes you different? I've got 20 other calls with people with similar titles and backgrounds.
Yes.
What makes you different? And some can speak to it. Some, have traditional communication. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but really getting around that vocabulary pivot, offering that outlier, like that amazingness. And so I'm super pumped about your playbook. I'm sorry I missed that post on LinkedIn. I'm gonna have to go back and stalk your feed just to be able to see it. And if I can find it, everyone, I'm gonna make a quick note here. I'm gonna find that and I'll put that in the show notes, the link to that post for you, Mackenzie, when this episode goes live. Okay,
Thank you.
love it. Italy sound amazing. There's experiences to be learned with that. Trends is huge, and you do something really well that I like to do is those conversations. Those conversations just are, and when I get text messages from admins that are like, "Hey, can I book some time?" and there's some that do that and some that just don't. And I'm like, I get something out of these chats, even though you think they're just for you. And so I know that you see those conversations as, yeah, I'm looking for something, but you probably also offer, some words of wisdom, right? That knowledge thing that we were talking about. What motivates you to help these professionals grow in
Mm.
that career? And,
Mm.
we've got a couple titles, right? Executive assisting is going to come up, that chief of staff, and you say executive operations, which I love that. Give us what motivates you to help them
Mm.
really. And my word is evolve
Mm.
versus grow, right? Really evolve, which they ultimately mean the same. But something about growth is like, everybody's looking for growth. Let's evolve. Anyway, so
Yeah.
I digress. What motivates you to help them?
Well, I think personal development, self-inquiry, philosophy, those are some of my most favorite topics. And the way that I can engage with folks and impart some of those ideas and challenge their thinking and help them along their journey is super rewarding. I mean, one-on-one work, seeing another human being go from point A to point B is one of the most rewarding things ever. I kind of maybe attribute it to being the oldest of probably at least a dozen cousins or, the older brother. I also ran a admissions consulting and life coaching business for high school students. So I've actually worked one-on-one with a lot of young people to see how we can
Hmm.
advance their journey. And so I
Yeah.
bring those experiences from life and bring it into my professional realm.
Hmm.
And the more that you're able to help, folks in the office of the CEO, of course, the more that you're able to have an impact on the CEO and the C-suite team itself. So there's a direct amplification of your effort on them and then
Mm,
transfers to the C-suite team. There's also, I think, a little bit of I would say maybe neglect or ignorance on the behalf of what the office of the CEO team members actually do. So you're not getting a lot of accolades, you're not getting a lot of achievements or shout outs from the
yeah.
CEO themselves because they're super busy. And
Right.
everyone's running around being like, what, you're a gatekeeper? Like, I'm trying to get the CEO,
Hmm.
who are you? What do you actually do? There's a lot of role confusion actually. So
Mm,
when you actually engage with folks in the office of the CEO, give them a platform to talk about their own story, their own
mm.
professional journey, plus the best practices that they're using in the office of the CEO. There's a lot of magic that happens. Um, Another thing too is that, sometimes they're too busy just to engage with other folks about talking about their job.
Yeah.
There's the chaos of the office of the CEO. And, the chief and the executive assistant, their goal is to reduce the chaos, but they can only go so far sometimes. And so
Right.
it's at the detriment to their own personal development and to their own thinking about how they can get better sometimes. And so that's also really rewarding to give people an outlet to actually just talk about the day to day,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
craziness sometimes. And so that's really, really rewarding. Of course, the piece of cake, uh, the thing that takes the cake is actually just compiling all the knowledge and then actually sharing it with the rest of the audience. I mean, I'm coming up again off of a high where, I think I'm getting so many DMs and connection requests. I think I got 200 followers like within the last 24 hours.
That's
Uh,
amazing.
just like, looking at the energy and excitement from the community, reflecting it back to them as a content creator.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you said effort to the team, and then you wonderfully touched on the pain points that so many have, whether you're in the office of the CEO or not, is acknowledgement, AKA the accolades. And there is, and I want to hear your thoughts. There is an island that sort of even though there's the collective in the office of the CEO, the EA has some elements of living on an island, right? They know before someone else does, right? Or even the chief of staff before the EA learns this. And then there's an administrative assistant to round out the team in the office of the CEO. And that effort piece, I'm constantly promoting with my audience. It starts with you being proud of you. And it starts
Yes.
with you acknowledging that you're doing things for you every day. And that, hey, listen, I love accolades, right? I don't hear that much often from my clients. So I kind of rely on me to say, okay, I'm doing a good job. And, Leah's really good too. She's like, wow, that was a great call for us, right? And so there's that collaboration. Um, I want to know, does the COS, the chief of staff, do they have some of that island component? Because it sort of does stop with them, whereas the CEO, it stops with them. And even though
Yeah,
there's a collective, can you give us a little visibility into that aloneness that comes as a COS? And I'm not trying to derail our chat, but this was
sure.
a big deal because you said effort, and then you touched on the pain point that it's like it's chaos, and you try to
Mm.
navigate and have a grip. I don't say control anymore. I say try to have a grip. Tell us
Yep.
a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's this whole emotional inner workings of the minds of both executive assistants, chiefs of staff, CEOs, that I think we can do so much more to explore and talk about so that folks don't feel so alone and isolated. I mean, the
Yeah.
reality is that there are no other chiefs of staff in the organization usually.
Yeah.
So the role that you're doing, no one knows what the heck you're doing. You maybe
Right.
don't even know what you're doing, and whether you're doing it correctly, right? Back
Yeah.
to your point of like being a CEO yourself, it's like, oh, I guess I'm doing well. The client's telling me like they pay me money. Like I guess that's like one KPI, but how am I
Exactly.
really doing, right? So it's very lonely as a chief of staff and also the CEO because you have no peer groups within your organization.
Yeah.
That's why executive coaching is super important. That's why communities are super important.
Totally agree.
Uh, and then the other thing, again, I think the title executive assistant, chief of staff does not really speak about the impact or the realm in which you are functioning, which is the office of the CEO.
That could be a
So
whole hour. Yeah. Just that
exactly,
right
it's the
there.
whole
Yeah.
exactly. So it's terrible branding. It's also confusion with the rest of the organization. The title is not great. So when you're trying to communicate your impact or relate to other people, people have this barrier, this comprehension barrier that they need to overcome in order to fully understand what you're doing. The
Hmm.
final thing I would say is around ROI, which can be very cut and dried and financial, but I think there are
Yeah.
emotional benefits that need to be brought into play. The fact of the matter is that the ROI of the EA or the ROI of the chief of staff, that type of business case is not standard within the industry. It's a huge problem.
It's
Like,
extremely
how do
skewed.
we
It's
justify
it's
the money?
uh,
How do we justify the benefit and the cost? We really are not able to articulate that. So the more we're able to actually implement systems that measure the impact of the chief of
mm,
staff, executive assistant, the more we're able to collect the data which backs up the business case and the ROI of these two vital folks in the office of the CEO. And then that
mm.
gives that resource, you know, something you can stand on. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I did XYZ. It
Right.
gave you ABC outcome, and
Exactly.
you should not only pay me more, but
Yeah. That's
but
another
also think about
conversation
the
too.
running.
Right.
But there's a lot of ROI, business case to be explored, and then the emotional side, thinking about all the benefits that the chief and the EA bring to the CEO, that could also be super valuable. So it's like making having the CEO have more fun on the job,
Oh, I've been talking about the dopamine hit a lot
Yeah,
lately, and I'm on this huge journey, especially as I launch kind of this keynote speaking component of myself, separate of running exceptional admins.
sure,
We need more dopamine moments.
totally.
And I think that it's going to take a long time to get there. But, I think there's also an appetite for that now. The coping skills we've been carrying and using the last 5 years are just starting to, fall apart, and they're
Exactly.
not there. And so now people are looking for that next thing to carry them through whatever they're going through. And I'm like, why not ask for dopamine? Let's get the dopamine hits
Totally.
going. Absolutely. You bring up a really good point with business case. So I want to pivot. What shifts have you seen in this profession over the last 5, 6, 7 years? It's kind of hard to use the last 5 years,
Yeah.
but we'll say last 5 or 6. And I want to point out, when I started this company in 2017, I one, didn't know what I was doing from a talent acquisition standpoint, but I knew the world of serving a founder, CEO, celebrity as that executive operations assistant. And I started getting requests for admins. I'm like, today that sounds like a chief of staff. They're like,
Mhm.
oh, no, 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 no. I'm like, but no, really, you're asking for a lot of strategy, going to meetings for you, presenting information, business case reports,
Sure.
documentation. And I think that's also where, in the world of what you're doing and what I'm doing, there's gray, which is why I was very excited to chat with you.
Yeah.
Tell us, since we haven't been there, what have you seen
Yeah.
about that? And it kind of does narrow into the chief of staff, even though we want to keep focusing on the office of the CEO.
Yeah.
What's been going on? What can we learn from you about that evolution over the last 5 or 6 years?
So there's a few tailwinds and trends that are, bringing everything to a head or changing directions.
Yeah.
You have this entire decade run up of startups,
Mm,
you know.
yeah.
So a lot of cheap capital
Yeah.
and funneling into SaaS startups or more.
Yep.
And it's minting all these founders. And the founders don't know what they're doing because they've never been a CEO or founder before.
Bless
God
their
bless
heart.
them.
We're
Exactly.
blessing hearts here. Yeah.
Exactly. Which is great for our business,
For sure. Yep.
but they need a support team. And so that has necessitated the demand for the rise of executive support, executive operations. Now, the other thing that's happened is technology. And technology has made work harder and more complex.
No, wait, Mackenzie, it's supposed to help us. It's
It's
supposed to
supposed
make
to
it
help
easier.
us.
Anyway, okay,
Um,
yeah. So makes it complicated. Yeah.
Exactly. So work is more complex. It's hybrid, it's remote, or maybe it's in person plus hybrid and remote. So it's very complicated. There's people all over the world working in different time zones, and then it results in pings and notifications and crazy Gantt charts and
Mm,
dependencies. And so getting the work done is harder. And so the organization to do your job is harder.
yeah.
Uh, Now, the other thing that's happening is I would say with the pandemic, people are now more open talking about I need help because it
Such a
sucked.
gift. Such a gift. Yeah.
Thank God. I mean, people went through, to hell and back, and they were like, okay, well, we can't keep doing the stuff that we're doing before. That's stupid.
Yeah. What are we doing? What
So,
are we doing? Yeah. We can't
so they're
keep
like,
doing it this way.
well,
Yeah.
we're gonna do the same stuff over and over again. That's the
Yeah.
definition
Status
of
quo is
insanity.
death. Yeah.
Exactly. So we cannot do that. So the people are looking for other solutions. If it's not a tech solution to make work easier, maybe it's a people solution that's
Oh, look at that. What a concept.
better.
Yeah.
Now, the process solution also might be the opportunity, which is why I think the office of the CEO concept is really vital. The office has this concept of structure and flow, and process and rules and checklists, to make work better. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the rise of the term, the office of the CEO, the founder's office, that we're starting to see within the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I also see the executive operations term itself become more and more common, which I think is great. Like I was saying before, chief of staff, executive assistant, I think these are weak, non-descriptive words.
So true.
If you look at exec ops or executive operations, you know exactly who the target audience and beneficiaries, which is executives, and then ops. So you're again going back to the process as the solution
Mm-mm-mm.
to the problems that we're trying to go against. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say again, the rise of startups, technology making work harder, the pandemic, and then people looking towards people and process solutions has all contributed to the rise of the executive operations and office of the CEO teams.
Yeah. So historically, it's been the chief of staff to the president of the United States. Then
Yes.
it was in inside academia where there was a chief of staff to the dean, the president. And then there was a craving, and this was pre 5 years ago, for I need different help than quote, and I'm saying this, my audience knows and loves knows I love them. That secretary who got rebranded to the new title executive assistant, right? Then there was the new executive assistant that doesn't fit into that rebranding because they're more thoughtful and intellectually curious and higher problem solvers who do go into that gray area of starting to do some of these reports, talking about KPI, part of culture,
Mhm.
and all these other things. Um, when you see chief of staff in an organization, um, what does that look like? What does when you did it, what did a day look like? And then a week? Because I love executive operations. We just said status quo is terrible. And I love to talk about disrupting that. And then they need help. And this will lead right into the playbook question.
Mhm.
Tell us, what does that look like?
Yes. So it's always the lawyer response. It depends, right? And that's the beauty of my work, and working with clients. Like every human being is different. Every
Yeah,
leader is different.
for
Every org
sure.
is different.
We
What
all know that too. So it's kind of a loaded question. Okay, yeah.
so sorry to
You're
disagree.
right though.
There's
Yeah,
this high variability, which makes getting the profile right and the scope right.
so
Um,
true.
if you are a company that has regulators, because you're in energy, and I'm just talking to folks in the office of the CEO for a publicly traded energy company, then you best believe you got to get domain expertise and regulatory relationships in the office of the CEO. If
Yeah,
not, dead in the water.
yeah,
Versus maybe like a widget company in the Midwest that has made the same widget for a long time and doesn't really have a lot of industry scrutiny. That's a different type of manufacturing domain expertise and operations expertise that the chief needs to have. So it really depends on the org and then also the leader. Does the leader like to be really public facing? And so you need to support the speaking events and the
yes.
and the the PR aspect versus CEOs are very private and they prefer to be more inward focusing.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the chief will mirror the leader sometimes, and then also fill in some of the gaps that the CEO does not want to play,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe doesn't exist in a C-suite team. So the
Mm-hmm.
chief of staff role is moldable to the needs and dynamic, and that's why I recommend updating the role every at least 6 months, if not quarter, just to check in to see like, hey,
Because
is this the
strategies are
value that I'm bringing?
changing and focus
Back
is
to the
changing.
ROI.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And then the market's changing. So
Oh
it's
my
like even if
gosh.
you were
Yeah,
private, you need to be public,
for
which
sure.
is again another tale of why these support teams are super important because now you're expected to be in social media and now you're expected to you know, do podcasts and webinars and blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
how are you going to do that? If you've never done it before, you got to get someone who is a corporate comms person in the office of
yeah.
the CEO. Um, so that is all to say that the chief will mold itself to the org. I mean, there's definitely standard rules that they play, and I like to say strategic advisor, trusted confidant, master organizer, director of communications, chief change agent, special projects,
Yeah.
um, like kind of like leadership performance coach, or executive coach. And that's, the very senior chief who has experience, maybe even been a chief executive officer themselves or chief CXO themselves. But
Mm-hmm.
they're able to deliver that type of coaching, which is sometimes emotional too, right?
Yeah.
Back conversation
There's a lot going on. Oh
to
yeah.
the C-suite because they're alone and they don't know what the heck they're doing, and they're like, should I do this? Should I do that?
Yeah.
Um, so
And
there's
it
there's a lot of
stops with them.
yeah,
That's
it's a lot of
why,
different
yeah.
roles.
And even though you didn't give us like, well, at 8 a.m. this happens, I wasn't looking for that. But I think at least how it landed for me listening to you, it's the same premise with the admin world. And I
Yes.
come back to which, when clients call me, they're like, hey, we've heard about your work. We really want to work with you. How fast can we meet candidates? I'm like, I might have 10 passively looking, and I don't ask for exclusivity from candidates, but I'm just granted and honored with that because they're like, I don't want to look at the job boards. I'm going to wait for you to find me the perfect thing. I'll tell the
Yeah,
client, I'll say, I could have 10 passive people. Doesn't mean any of them are for you. And it doesn't mean that they're your match because I don't even know you yet. And we haven't learned,
exactly.
which, by the way, that's kind of a pink flag for us over here. If they come in with that psychology, I realize I got to do a lot of education fast and I got to
Mhm.
figure out what are you looking for? Do you even know? And they usually don't, right? They usually don't. And so you brought up something really gorgeous just about shedding that light on there's this office of the CEO. There are common experiences for the individual, and it all leans into the leader. Darn it, that leader better be good
I
or
know.
be open to hearing to your point about the coaching that wasn't a great meeting, right? And being able to have that, as you said, confidant, really the communication. Tell us about this amazing playbook that you have. What's the biggest thing someone should consider if they want to grow into
Mm.
this? And I'm going to then say chief of staff because I know that your
Yeah,
first playbook was
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
Is
yeah.
that right?
That's right. So
Tell us all about the playbook.
the Chief of Staff playbook was published about a year ago, and it's been downloaded about 3,000 times since. I was like, okay,
Awesome.
time to re-update this thing because I've been writing
Yeah.
like more than 100 posts since last year, and so
Yeah.
gearing up to release the launch and execute the launch of the second edition. Super exciting. More than 500 folks have already raised their hand as of yesterday
Nice.
that they want this copy. And in it, it is a very comprehensive, probably I would say like 80 plus page, 78 topic playbook that's geared
Dang.
toward learning tracks. So for the founder and CEO, they can learn what the heck the chief of staff is, first of all, chief of staff 101.
That's
What are the
great.
benefits, how to hire, and then how to leverage one to become.
Mm-hmm.
For the chiefs of staff themselves, it's how do you become an elite chief of staff and leave your legacy. And the hint
Mm,
is build the office of the CEO so that there's actually
yeah.
something standing when you leave. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and for job seekers, so EAs that are looking to be promoted into the chief of staff or seek out chief of staff jobs themselves, really understanding the hiring process in depth, like what leaders are looking for, and then how to brand yourself, how to really,
We're all about that here. All about
and
that
then
branding. Yep.
exactly. And then how to like maybe even create a candidate labor market of one, which is just you. You know what I mean? Like, how do you literally create a relationship with a leader that you're never competing with anyone else,
Yep.
that you know them so intimately, that you've already done a project with them, so they know your capabilities, and you're
Mm-hmm.
ready to take the next step to step into that chief of staff position. And so that is what the playbook covers. That's a little bit of a mouthful, but it's meant to be super comprehensive, and it's a labor of love that I'm going to publish again for the rest of the community.
So Lee is here in the Zoom with us. I'm inspired by Mackenzie, but I'm not going to start anything like it because we got a lot on our desk right now. I want to share with you, and you're welcome to use this because you really kind of just touched on it. I've been saying for like the last 7 or 8 months, every candidate, every professional is a business of one. And what I mean by that is you are offering something, a service. Like I'm personally Exceptional Admin's a business, and I have a proposition for you, prospective client. And that proposition is I'm going to offer you all these things. And I'm going to also not just offer a service, I'm going to bring a wealth of knowledge. You're going to leave even the first 30-minute, let's connect. You're going to leave smarter. And it's not to be arrogant. It's just a matter of I'm the resource on the topic. You don't go do your own taxes when you've made your first million. You go to that resource. You go to that person that understands, the filing, the extension, the tax laws, any advantages with, starting this or that from a tax perspective. I tell admins, you're a business of one. And in order for you to put yourself in a position of um, high acquisition, you have to create that differentiation of my proposition of how I unlock value, right? Which you said earlier is because I do this, this, and this, which is so much tied to that branding. So I'm a fan of all of that. I think that's fantastic. Okay, so that's great. So the playbook, when is the playbook due? When is it going
So
to
it's
be
going to
out?
be released to the folks that attend the launch party next Wednesday.
Launch
Uh,
party, which by the way,
that's
when this airs, that will have already happened. Sorry, everyone.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. So we'll have a really super fun party. there's about 100 people that are coming, so I'm really
Super
excited about that. And then
awesome.
the next day, I'll be dropping the link to my general LinkedIn audience. So that's next Thursday. I believe that's March 14th, 2024. TBD on the time. Probably
Well,
11.
and Mackenzie's up to a ton of things. So even though this will air later, you're going to want to follow him and you're going to want to participate and see what he's doing on LinkedIn and get cohorts going. Probably, I think there was some vision around that.
That's right.
Um, what's an anomaly people don't know about the COS and Office of the CEO?
Mm, mhm. Well, for the chief of staff, job, it can really suck. I mean, it can really,
Can you say that again? I think my audience just they see the grass
yeah.
is
Hey
like
guys,
vibrant emerald green, like the Wizard of
uh,
Oz.
it can really suck.
Okay, thanks for repeating that.
There we go. If obviously if your boss is not a great partnership, that will just
Right,
ruin
that doesn't
everything.
help. Yeah.
But just even the day-to-day grind. I mean, again, like we said, there's maybe not a lot of celebration or every accomplishment like is just happening because now you have to move on to the next five. You
Yeah,
know what I
right.
mean? Like it's relentless. It burns people out, it grinds people out if you don't have the right support or coaching or boundaries. So it can really
Hmm.
suck. And it can take a lot of energy out of you. So you have to take some sort of R&R after this job. Like
Mm,
some people, they just cannot move on to a director level job, which is maybe their career goal because they have simply burned out. And
yeah.
so I like to say you have one card. So play that card wisely when you want to play
Ooh,
that card. That card is a chief of staff card in your professional journey. And that card is so vital that you play it
love it.
correctly that it's like the risk of the bad hire for a CEO. It's like the risk of a bad boss and a bad
Yeah,
fit for you as a
absolutely.
candidate. You do not want to
Yeah.
do the card at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So really look out for healthy standards of working. Look out for strong process, strong team vision, mission, money in the bank.
Oh,
That's
that's a
really
big
big.
one. Yeah,
Huge,
especially right
huge,
now,
huge.
for sure.
So that you're choosing when to play your chief of staff card at the right time. So that's one thing I would say about the chief of staff job that people don't realize is that it can really, really suck sometimes. Um, Now, the office of the CEO, I would say people don't realize how hard it is to build it. I know I'm biased because that's what I helped do for my client.
Right. Yeah.
But when you're in the maelstrom of chaos and you're just trying to get the to-do list to go from 100 to 80 to 60 even,
Yeah.
do
But then
you have
stuff keeps getting
time?
added.
Yeah, do you have time to like do all this org dev and process definition and
Yeah.
build the true office of the CEO? No, you don't.
That's why you
Um,
bring in Mackenzie. Yeah.
they bring in me, but it's like you need to have some sort of like factor reset of the stuff that you're doing, in order to actually move towards a new set of behaviors. And you have to have a guide and you have to know what best practices to implement. You can get enough and I think a lot out of my playbook, but if you want to actually implement it at a very high level, that's where the rubber hits the road and
Yeah.
you really need a dedicated project and resource to actually build this true office.
You said that one card and play it correctly.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask an ignorant question. Does that mean someone's really only a chief of staff once, or can you actually have a career chief of staffing? And is there a turnover component? Because in the EA world, right, the honeymoon phase of buttoning someone up can be about 15 to 18 months. And then it becomes a little too rinse and repeat. The
Yeah.
strategic thinking isn't there, mental gymnastics has dropped off. And when I've been doing this, Helani, I want to work with you, but you guys rotate every 2 years. I'm like, but do you know why?
Hmm.
That doesn't have to be your story.
Yeah.
And so play a little bit into that amazing thing you said of one card and expand on that for us, please.
Yeah. So typically the chief moves on and rotates to another part of the organization or just leaves. It's a tour
Hmm.
of duty that's maybe 18 to 24, 36 months, particularly within smaller organizations.
Yep.
Because the demand and the growth of the organization is so high, the burnout risk is high.
So
So you
high.
cannot just keep grinding it in day out. I
Yeah.
mean, it's one chief that I was like coaching. I was like, dude, we need to set alarms. So you close your laptop at 9:30. Let's start there. Then
Right.
next week we're gonna do 9:15. It's gonna go off.
Right.
then 9 p.m., then so and so forth.
Yeah.
Like, this
Yeah.
is nuts. This is crazy.
Yeah.
You're gonna put out, and then you can't do the thing that you wanted to do, which is maybe
Mm,
found a company after this. Good luck with that. I mean, you're gonna
right.
get burnt out. So that is really important for folks to know for the chief role within smaller to mid-sized organizations. Within larger, it's the chief is much more, they have a team, within the
Mm,
office of the CEO, so they have more support. It's much more stakeholder relationship based, it's slow moving because you're in a large corporate and you're much more senior. They typically only take late stage candidates for that
yeah.
chief position. You're like the chief of staff to Accenture, for example, CEO is like this guy's like, 3 decades of experience, was a former MD before. I mean, this
Jeez.
is
Yeah.
very senior. They know how to manage their time and energy and they won't burn out because they have
Right.
and the career chief is starting to maybe I'm hedging, you can tell,
Yeah.
maybe becoming more apparent within the industry, but um, there has to be some safeguards around burning out. Otherwise, you cannot continue on. Nor do you want to continue on. I mean, you're
Yeah.
like, if you do it once and you burn out, well, yeah, not only can you not do it, but like, why would you do the same thing again?
Yeah, which is so interesting that you say that because we hadn't covered this in our first visit. And then now, for me, the work that I do with specific on the admin hires, it's often viewed as a luxury hire. And so I wonder, and I've had in the back of my mind, just with the high craving for my admin audience. They're like, my next stop is chief of staff. I'm like, wait a minute, it could be, but now we're here, we're talking to you and getting a lot of that insight. Do you think a chief of staff hire, and again, it is circumstantial based on the size, the cash, and all that, is it viewed as a luxury, or you think that's less today because there's an appetite for it, especially with all these founders? Is the COS to round out that office of the CEO? Is that a luxury hire? Or do you think they see it as
I'm biased, obviously, and I'm out here educating,
yeah,
proselytizing, saying like it's not a luxury. There's
it's
actually
not.
a
Yeah, we're the
bottom
same
line
then.
situation going on, and there's a
Hmm.
lot of education, obviously, that has to happen. I mean, the ROI and the business case standards have to rise for the
Yes,
entire industry.
absolutely. And that's a long feat, big feat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other angle I'm using is the board, actually. And I'm like, it is irresponsible for you to act as a board, your fiduciary duty,
Hmm.
and also CEO, to actually not have a support team and a strong team around CEO. Like they're gonna burn out. That's a huge risk to the company, and performance is gonna suffer. You're not doing your duty to shareholders.
That's exactly right.
So that's kind of the other stick component of the
Yeah.
argument.
The board part. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's really, I think, valuable and interesting for a board to consider how they can get better oversight over the performance of the company and actually just guarantee the success of an incoming CEO, perhaps,
Mm.
to make
Hmm.
sure that they don't turn over.
Hmm.
Um, that type of power broker influence, I think, is going to change the industry. Now, CEOs are getting this bombardment of messages from investors saying like you need to be lean, you need to be operationally like efficient,
It's
blah
like,
blah.
okay, what do you want?
Exactly. So there's like this kind of mixed messaging that's happening.
Whiplash. I've got whiplash. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's the kind of mixed messaging and luxury concept that the CEOs maybe are internalizing. But the reality is that I point to their personal life, or point to their having fun on the job, or not having any more dopamine hits. I'm
Dopamine.
like, well,
Exactly.
you want
Yeah.
to keep doing this and burn out, and like, why the hell are you doing this? Back to philosophy. It's like, why are you doing
Right.
this?
Yeah.
Who's it for?
What are we doing?
Have you
Yeah.
lost your way?
Right.
What do you want to do about it?
Yeah.
You don't want to do anything about it. Okay, bye. I'll talk to you in 2 years when you're like really burning out.
And you brought up a great word just to
You
really
know?
interrupt legacy.
Yes.
And I think I don't say that word enough like publicly on the show, but I'm thinking about that. Right. And
Hmm.
that key question is what ambitious goals do you have for the next 12 months that someone's going to help you get there? Because I
Exactly.
believe in you, but I also believe in the power of people helping you.
Yeah.
And there's something so magnificent about that, which is amazing. Yeah. So the luxury thing. And I think it's impressive. I interviewed a woman. She was the first episode of this year, career strategy, growth, strategic career growth. Their company hires their chief of staff from inside the organization, and it's a 12-month seat.
Hmm.
And they do a rotating chief of staff. So anyone in the company, for the most part, who qualifies, right, can apply to it when they open it. So the admin I interviewed on my show, she has onboarded,
Hmm.
6 chief of staff.
Yeah.
And she brings them in, she strategizes with them. Her title's executive administrator. And so we talked about that on that episode, career growth. And I thought that that was an interesting strategy versus taking it from the outside. And then to the point of like the duration of and then it sucks. They're like, no, please let me go back to where I was.
I know.
Tell us of any transformative story that you've got, in your experiences that would be enjoyable for us to listen to.
About my own professional career.
You could tell me that, right? A transformative story for someone who stepped into that chief of staff seat.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I would say think about all the stories in the vault, which one's
Yeah,
the
which one do you
fun
say,
and
right? Yeah.
most
Uh-huh.
tricky. Um, you know, I just connected with someone in the office of the CEO of a top 5 software industry company. So we're talking
Phenomenal.
very
That's great.
senior.
Yeah.
The CEO, and him, he had a really great relationship for the first, I think, decade of the company. And he went to go work for another company and then boomeranged back. So the opportunity is to bring a wealth of understanding of, how the CEO operates and what the personal likes and dislikes are, and the close connection, and trust. Uh, Plus the decades of experience at the company and other companies back boomeranged in this office of the CEO. So it's kind of this like swan song, like, you know, um, really capstone professional experience for this individual.
Hmm.
And they're like the inner circle. I mean, they know the whole journey. I mean, it's like an aunt or uncle that's like known you for your entire life. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And they just seen you like grow up as a kid and like brought you ice
Yeah.
cream and then
Right.
seen you go to college and see you mature and grow. This is the same idea here. It's like someone who's like a true executive coach and mentor to this CEO. And again, this is a top 5 like software, CEO. This is like they are a household recognizable name.
Right.
Uh, and to know that you have an impact on this person and the rest of the office of the CEO team, to be able to speak so candidly and at that deepest level of trust and understanding with the CEO, that is a level that is, I think, unparalleled, within the industry. I often think about like artists and their muses, actually.
Right. I was just thinking that.
Okay.
That is so crazy because and Leah does it for me, which is interesting because it reminds me when I did it for my last executive and just really showing up in like this very zen type demeanor.
Hmm.
Are you really sure about that? And there's a little bit of undertone of like, I want to really tell them don't do that, but you need them to sort of have that buy-in. And I think the transformation story part there is just a lot of the times admins get interested in leaving because they've become stagnant. And I'm
Hmm.
thinking, let's just reboot what
Yes.
you've got in front of you because the historical knowledge, the value of that over time, and the agency, right, that one has with being a person who's going to challenge the status quo or put the executive in the corner, right, in the right way. And there's something beautiful about that. And I've also said, which obviously I'm in the talent acquisition, I'm like, yeah, let me help you find a better job. There's a piece of it that's like, you got to start all over. And there's unknowns about that. And
Yeah,
so for me, I'm big on stay through the period that seems flat for you because there's an upside coming. Let's
totally.
ride it. And the upside, by the way, could be you just working on you, right? It doesn't have to
Yes.
be the business
You can go away.
continually.
I mean,
Yeah,
you can literally go away to another company and then boomerang back, That's
exactly.
what
Yeah.
I said. It's just like it's huge. I mean, it's really about knowing yourself, knowing the other person, and
Oh, which is so
rekindling the
key.
relationship, you know, um,
Yeah.
being open about it.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get that change if you try to like do some stuff in the background. Like you got to be
Right.
honest, like, hey, this is kind of flatlined.
Yeah.
We let's
What are we
revisit the
doing?
old times. It was really
Yeah.
great.
Dopamine.
How
Yep.
do we get back there? You know what I
Yep.
mean? I think we can do it. This is what we can
Absolutely.
do. Are
And
you in? you
And they
know?
might be thinking it. I've often found this,
They're
that they're
gonna be
sort of
feeling it
thinking it
too.
too.
They
Yeah.
are exactly like
And that they want it too, so why not be the bold one? My next
yes,
question, as we kind of get closer here to the end, I'm actually going to make it twofold. Is
sure.
there a book that you've read that just you really like that you want to recommend people to read? It doesn't have to be about the COS.
Mm.
I have a books page on my website, and I often mention books. And is there a book that you've read that you're like, this was a really great read that people should know about?
So I'm like a huge nerd. I did this like residential humanities program in college. So, one of my all-time favorites is The Odyssey by
Okay.
Homer. And the reason
By
why is
who? Sorry, who was
because
that?
by Homer,
Okay.
um, poet. And so it's a tale of homecoming, of adventure, of family and love, of mythical creatures and philosophy and knowing yourself. And so
Mm,
Odysseus goes on this big journey to fight a bunch of monsters and tries to get back home to his
yeah.
wife and his son.
Okay.
But there's all these like, you know, troubles along the way.
Sure.
Um, Learns about himself in that process while
Mm,
still keeping his North Star intact, which is getting back home to his family. And so
gosh, that's
it's a
great.
really beautiful masterpiece. It's really about like, again, self-reflection and knowing thyself through this journey,
That's huge.
and emerging super strong from because of it.
Hmm.
So I know it's a little bit of a commitment to read.
Sure.
Um, it goes by quickly, and I think there's so much we can learn from ancient texts and literature.
What's a favorite quote that you like to recite?
Mm. Now you're putting me on the spot. I don't know if I have like a
You don't
favorite
think if you have a
quote,
quote?
but
Okay.
the favorite scene I would say, well, I don't know if I want to give it away because
Okay. Don't give it away then. I'll
I'm not
give
gonna give it
my
away.
favorite quote.
Uh,
Okay.
but
You go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, I would just say, just really, it's around the style of writing. We don't have these like oral tradition epics
Mm,
anymore. We
yeah.
have TikTok. So the eloquence of the speaker, and people used to tell these stories around the campfire. By the way,
Yeah.
just thinking about this epic, storytelling, masterful storyteller, that brings me back.
Hmm. Give us some closing comments. Let us kind of have, as this has been a great conversation, give us some closing comments, some deep things to think about. And then, tell us where. I know you're on LinkedIn. I'll have, um, Leah, can you find Mackenzie's LinkedIn and drop it in the chat for our guests that are here with us today? Thank you. Mackenzie, yeah, tell us, get some closing thoughts, rounding out all this great wisdom you have dropped for us to listen to today. Channel your
So
inner epic story.
yeah, I mean, Google pioneered people operations in the early thousands, and we are at the early innings of executive operations. We have just started to scratch the surface on what's possible with the office of the CEO. I mean, this is a super exciting time. We have an opportunity
Hmm.
to push the bounds and be super innovative. And so every one of you who's watching this replay, who's an executive assistant, a chief of staff, whoever you might be within your professional journey, you have the opportunity to pick up a spade today and actually create a tool that allows your leaders to do better at their job and be more effective.
Mm,
And there's nothing more satisfying than creating something new for yourself and for someone else and seeing the impact that it drives in their life. And so the
yeah.
time is now. The time is now to actually take up, that tool, implement it, and move towards this future nirvana where a lot of people have more fun on the job and you're actually doing things faster and more efficient.
Uh-huh.
There's so much goodness that awaits us if we all come together as a community. So I recommend, folks to check me out on LinkedIn, to check out my playbook on the chief of staff. I have a forthcoming one on the office of the CEO as well. And then webinars and roundtables based on the content insights and also the community that I've generated by having these conversations with folks from top, companies, corporates, nonprofits, and scale ups around the world. So check me out on LinkedIn, check me out on YouTube, and I'll see you soon on the next event.
Awesome. Mackenzie, you're wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing wisdom.
Thanks for having me.